Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Joy Vernon, and today we're doing something that is really very exciting for me, and that is a new tarot tableau that I developed that I'm calling the Alchemical Tower Tarot Tableau. And it integrates astrology and alchemy and tarot in a really fun, interesting way that also is very useful for studying these things using a tarot, specific tarot layout. So let's get going, and I will share my presentation with you right now. Here we have the Alchemical Tower Tableau, a major arcana map to spiritual transformation. And so here's our agenda. First of all, I'll cover what a tableau is because not everyone's familiar with that terminology. Then we're going to start with astrology, and I call that launching from the heavens. We'll arrive at the Terra Firma of Terra, which is familiar to more people, particularly the people that follow me, and then evolve through the seven stages of alchemy. What we'll really focus on for today is this detailed look at each of those alchemical stages and the related Tower Tableau cards. So the benefits, we'll examine the benefits of using the Alchemical Tower Tableau to study the major arcana and also how to use the Alchemical Tower Tableau for spiritual growth. And of course, as always, I have a list of links and other resources for you. So first of all, the first question is, what is a tableau? And if any of you have ever studied with the builders of the Editum, you recognize this immediately. This is the tarot tableau that was introduced by Paul Foster Case and used extensively in his teachings as a teaching tool. And I just found this online one time when I was searching for that. And so, what is a tableau? It derives from the French word for table, and it is a layout of cards to aid in study. So, it's not a tarot spread, which is also a layout of cards, but it's a specific layout that's used to study from. The cards are always, using a tableau, the cards are always laid out in the same pattern, in the same way, so that you can note patterns, inconsistencies, relationships, things like that. And a seven column, three row format is most common, but any fixed arrangement of the cards fulfills the definition, such as a lemniscate, which we talk about a couple different formats of a lemniscate tableau in a video that I did a few years ago called Tarot Tableau. It was used, the first reference that I've come across to it was used by French occultist Papou to derive meanings for the cards, and the whole table that he laid out was like the first one there on the right-hand side, the seven ternaries, where he had one at the top, then two, then three, then four in the next column, five, six. So once you have the grid, he had three categories on the left-hand side, and at the bottom of every column, he had two categories. And so, based on a number of factors, including what the question was, you would combine one of the three factors applied to the row and one of the two factors applied to the column, and you could come up with a meaning for the card. So really quite fascinating way of working with the cards and studying them. And I believe that, I don't know that he is the original source, but that's the first, with my limited with my limited research abilities, that's the first one that I found. It was also used by Swiss occultist Oswald Wirth to understand the cards. And you can see this is my original highlights from my copy of his Tarot of the Magicians. And this is scanned from that book. And then, of course, later on, American occultist Paul Foster Case um, worked with that table extensively, added the Fool at the top. He uses the layout, the second layout here that's called the three septenaries. That is the 1 through 7, 8 through 14, and 15 through 21. And he started working with that, added the Fool to the top, and that has become extremely popular. The very fact that he learned it from the French tradition, I think, is quite obvious in the fact that he didn't call it a tarot table, but which is what the English is, but he did call it a tarot tableau. So now we go into astrology, and this illustration is from Honor Charlotte Appleton, and I think the sentence that it illustrates is, and I fetched the stars down from heaven to polish them. So astrology is where we're launching from. So here's the Thema Mundi. It's the Thema Mundi means chart of the world. It shows 15 degrees of Cancer rising. It places the moon in its home sign of Cancer and the sun in its home sign of Leo. And then each planet lines up with the sign that it rules. And so then Mercury is next to the sun in Virgo. Venus is a little further away from the sun in Libra, and then proceeding from the fastest planet to the slowest planet, we then get Mars ruling Scorpio and Jupiter in Sagittarius, and conclude with Saturn in Capricorn. And so this is just a really useful way of understanding the planets, understanding the signs that they rule. There's a legend that this indicates the two ways for the world to end, that if all the planets are conjoined in Cancer, the world will end in flood. And if all the planets are conjoined in Capricorn, the world will end in fire. And also, there is a reference, although it's full of questions, but there's a reference to the heliacal rising of Sirius, which happens in it happened at the in ancient Egypt, in like the Middle Kingdom. It happened usually around the sometime around the summer solstice, but sometimes before, sometimes after, and it depends on what date you're getting. And so and so this is a reference to that, and a lot of astrologers consider that heliacal rising of Sirius, which marked the inundation of the flood in Egypt, which started their growing season, that most astrologers consider that to happen in Cancer. Although there are other theories around that. So that's kind of the beginning of the world, this flood of water that creates the ability to farm and survive in a harsh world. So the planetary rulerships. So you'll notice here, if in this previous one, if we look at the moon and sun here, and we go one above the moon, well, that's Gemini. Guess what? Mercury rules Gemini, so we can plug Mercury in there. And then the next one is Taurus. Well, Venus rules Taurus, so Venus gets plugged in there. And then we go around the whole circle, and just like we went this way with going in speed from the fastest to the slowest, we repeat that from the fastest out to the slowest, and they go in order again, and they match up with their signs. And so this is probably how they developed the rulers of the planets, is just plugging the planets in according to speed and then saying, okay, this rules this. It's a foundation of sign rulerships, and the aspects also derive from this map, which gets me really excited, but we don't have time to cover all of that. So this is a really cool thing to study. It's a great introduction to astrology because it really ties a lot of things together. So now here's another arrangement of this, and this puts our planets in more of a ladder, like you might see in a like the Ptolemaic cosmos, or you might see in the Chaldean order of the planets, which does go from slowest to fastest. It starts with Saturn. The Chaldean order starts with Saturn. It goes to Jupiter and Mars, but then the next planet would be the Sun in the Chaldean order, and then would be Venus, Mercury, and would end with the moon, which is the very fastest. So this is mimicking that, but not quite. And so the Thema Mundi starts with that moon in Cancer and goes counterclockwise up to Capricorn. But if we look at this diagram, we can also see an interesting sequence that leads from Saturn in Aquarius down through the sun as the final step in Leo. This sequence is used by some alchemical authors to show the alchemical great work of transforming lead, which is Saturn, into gold, which is the sun. So now we are going to get onto terra firma with the tarot. And here's a nice illustration from Honor Appleton. And it is a boy overlooking, yeah, on a cliff overlooking at the sea, but it just looks like the fool. It looks like a lazy fool who's like, I don't think I'll jump today. I just want to sit here and look out and see what's going on. So, converting the Thema Mundi planetary ladder to tarot. So what I've done is I've arranged those planetary rulerships that we just saw from Saturn, Jupiter, in the Chaldean order, the sun, then Mars, and in the Chaldean order, the sun would go here. It doesn't in this inverted Thema Mundi order. And so we jump from Mars to Venus, then Mercury, then we get that moon and sun on the same line because they each rule one sign apiece. We get 6 signs on the left in order, reverse order. Aquarius, which is followed by Pisces, which leads into the first sign of the natural order of the zodiac, Aries, then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. We jump over to Leo here, then up Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. So these signs are in order, and the planets again map out to that Thema Mundi. On the right, I've translated it all into tarot cards, and that's just based on the Golden Dawn correspondences, which is familiar to many people. And if it's not familiar to you, that's what that handout was for. So, why am I even doing this? How did I get started looking at this? Why is this interesting? On June 22nd, last month, I attended a class called The Spiral Key, The Hidden Astrological Structure of the Golden Dawn Tarot, with tarot author and teacher Mary K. Greer. Early in the talk, she laid out the cards in the Thema Mundi grid, which is what I just showed you. Later, she introduced the 7-story Tarot Tower. And that is a tableau that, as you saw in the early French versions, there were the 7 trinities or 7 triplicities, and it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's another way of arranging that takes that horizontal table and puts it upright. So you have 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on, and it creates a tower. So she, and that's something that a variety of people work with. And she introduced this, but she laid it out the way it's usually laid out: cards 1, 2, 3 on the bottom, 4, 5, 6 above that, 7, 8, 9, and so on. So I was thinking at the time, I was like, well, why didn't she lay them out in astrological order as she already demonstrated? Now, partly the answer was because she'd moved on to a different point and was trying to discuss a different her next point. But I was getting kind of caught up in this question. And so I'm like, well, wait. I was so like sparked by this that I didn't want to interrupt her, but I was really like, why aren't you laying it out in astrological order? And I'm like, okay, take a breath, Joy, relax, don't interrupt her. You can figure this out. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that tarot tower only had six stories because it was six zodiacal signs on one side and six on the other, and the sun and moon had to share a row. But the metaphor of the seven-story tower always equates to the seven classical planets, along with their correspondences, including colors and metals and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was just like, that we should really have a tarot tower that is based on the planets. So I was wondering, can the Thema Mundi planetary ladder be rectified to seven stories? Well, yes, it can. As soon as the talk was over, I grabbed a couple Rider-Waite-Smith decks, started laying out card combinations on the floor, and it didn't take very long to put it together. And I will tell you, anybody familiar with the attributions of the cards would have come to, I'm pretty sure, the same conclusion as me. If not, and I always love creativity and a variety of ways of looking at things, but I think this was so obvious that most people would come to the same conclusion as me. But we'll see. So I'm here to share what I came up with and see if other people kind of agree with it and find the same value in it that I find. So here is our seven-story tower version one. So the Thema Mundi sequence is from the moon to Saturn, but the alchemical sequence is inverted, starting with Saturn ruling Aquarius, that's our lead, and ending with the sun, gold. So I put the planets here, Saturn, Jupiter, and it's really easy when you're thinking of the Thema Mundi, it's almost easier to think of the signs. So we start with Aquarius, progress forward to Pisces, then that fresh start of the beginning of the natural order of the zodiac with Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. And that goes Saturn as the ruler of Aquarius, Jupiter rules Pisces, Mars, Aries, Venus, Taurus. Mercury rules Gemini, the moon rules Cancer, and the sun rules Leo. And then we put the five planets, the two luminaries get one sign each, and the other five planets get they get a second sign. And so after Leo here, we start climbing up Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and end with Capricorn. So, but as you can see, this looks more like maybe a tower fan or something that has like a narrow base and then gets bigger. And not only that, it's only 19 cards. We're missing three of the major arcana, so it feels like it's not complete. So, where do we put them? And so we're missing the Fool, the Hanged Man, and Judgment. And for those of you that know a little bit of Kabbalah, you know that those are the three mother letters, and they also equate to the three elements. And in more recent times, they have been equated to the three outer planets. And so we're missing the Fool, the Hangman, and Judgment. And incidentally, if you're interested in Kabbalah, the three mother letters are these three cards. The seven planets are the seven double letters, and the 12 signs are the 12 single letters. So the Fool is the element air, and it represents the outer planet Uranus. The Hanged Man is the element water, and it's the outer planet Neptune. Judgment is the element fire, and the outer planet Pluto. And so where would you add these three to the grid? And this is where it gets fun. And it took me a few tries. And I tried a few different things, but then it became so obvious I couldn't believe I hadn't immediately seen it. And so Here is our seven-story tower rectified. And incidentally, I didn't say this before, but I moved the in order to get six signs on one side and six on the other, I realized I needed to move Leo from this position over to this position. Also, each there are these diagonals that connect the cards on the tower. So Leo is opposite to Aquarius, and so there's a diagonal here. If I had Leo over here, it would be a straight line. And so we needed to have the diagonals. And then Cancer is opposite to Capricorn. Virgo is opposite. Those first two aren't symmetrical, but the next are, all the rest are. So Virgo is opposite to Pisces, Gemini opposite to Sagittarius, uh, Libra is opposite to Aries, and Taurus is opposite to Scorpio. So those are the two reasons, just the 6 and 6 division and for those diagonals to work. That's the reason I moved Strength or Leo over to this side of the grid. So how else? Now, how are we going to place those last three cards? So the Fool is a hero making this journey. So he is not part of the tower, but above it, ready to descend. And there he is up at the very top. So the Hanged Man is water. And clearly, like I say clearly as if it was super obvious, but like I said, once I saw it, it was super obvious, but it took me a few tries to get it. It has to join the emotional moon and the cardinal water sign of Cancer. So it's going to end up right over here. And then finally, the Judgment card is fire, and so it's going to be with the fiery sun and the fixed fire sign of Leo, and we can see it come in right there. And so this is why I say this is so clear once you look at it and think about it for half a second, really, or 2 or 3 minutes, it becomes really obvious. So I think anybody else would probably arrange this way, given the task. And if they were familiar with the Golden Dawn attributions for the cards, which are based incidentally for people that ask, I have a talk on this as well, but they're based on Kabbalistic correspondences found in the Sefer Yetzirah. But wait, there's more. So the Fool is Uranus, a modern ruler of Aquarius. So kind of interesting that he's right up there next to Aquarius. I could have put him right on top, but I really wanted to let him come down through these seven rows and as he goes through his transformation. The Hanged Man, which we placed with the watery moon over here, is Neptune. Well, Neptune is an octave of Venus. Venus rules Taurus. Taurus is the exaltation of the moon. So the very fact that not only does this just fit in, obviously, because it's water, but it actually relates and directs us towards the second sign associated with the moon, which is Taurus. I'm like, that's very, very interesting to me. And not only is that true, but Judgment, which is an octave of Mars, up here, which rules Aries, which is a sign of the sun's exaltation. So that is true on both of those rows there. So very, very interesting. And that is what really kind of solidified it for me as I really got something here. This is really, you always try to find that when you're doing a reading, you try to find that repetition of three, that rule of three, that you find the symbolism like multiple places. And it's like, okay, this is really working. We've got multiple iterations of the symbolism. So now we're going to go on to alchemy, and this is another Honor Appleton illustration. I kind of liked it for alchemy just because it shows the boy and girl up in the moon, and it just had alchemy is a lot about bringing together polarities and then spiritualizing them. So the boy and girl on the moon just seemed like a really good expression of that. So here we have the Tower Tableau as the alchemical stages. And so Saturn is the stage of calcination. And so then these three cards would be our calcination cards. Jupiter is dissolution, and those three cards will work together. Mars is separation, so we get this grouping of three here. And going on, Venus is conjunction, Mercury is fermentation, the moon is distillation, and when we finally arrive at the end of the process, the sun is coagulation. And so I'm going to go into some background in alchemy, but before I do, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions. I think I even said this in the blurb that I wrote for the event. I said, this is advanced material without a doubt. And so I do work really hard to try to be clear and give you the information in an organized manner. So I do hope that even if it's a lot of info, that it is organized well so that you can start to pick it up quickly. And I think it's a really good, and this is one of my main points. I think that this is a really good study tool because it lets you study tarot in the context of astrology and alchemy. So you get to work the three systems at the same time. That's going to be one of my points later on. Okay, and somebody else says this is interesting and enlightening. You're learning a lot. Okay, awesome. That's so good to hear. Yay. Remember to I'm gonna give you some more, I'm gonna give you some background in alchemy now, and then we'll do the really fun thing, which is kind of bring it all together and discuss those card combinations. I have already learned so much just doing this process, so I'm really excited to share it with you. And as always, thank you for attending the Alchemical Tarot Tableau. So I hope you enjoyed this and learned something and are excited to proceed.